Well, let's continue with two new speakers, a new conversation around a new topic. The last words, remarks of this afternoon, evening. So I'm honored to introduce two incredible human beings. Lena, she's a visual artist, and thanks to her ethical and aesthetic clarity, tries to apply that lucid gaze, compassionate gaze, trying to understand the human being and to represent that complexity of our nature, of our lives, with a critical voice, critical but profoundly human. Ben Okri is a poet, novelist, essayist. Undoubtedly, to me, he opened up the doors wide to a fantastic world, and I thank him for that. He provides lucid hope, literature, shedding light in the darkness to make it visible, to make it transformative. He's incredibly sensitive in his writing. He plays a very active role in unleashing humanity, even amidst chaos. And the vision he proposes is that of reimagining, reshaping our destiny, a way of silent rebellion. So I leave you all with their luminosity. They will shed a lot of light this evening. All yours.
I think the mic is with me now. Hi. Thank you so much for this great introduction. It's really humbling. I have to say I hope I will be lucid. Most importantly, I hope I can share with you some knowledge, something that I've learned through the 47 years that I've lived so far. So I will start with the first maybe the white? No. So back. Oh. Maybe. Okay, so it's okay. I will just start with this slide and say that, I mean, I studied in a French missionary school, French. My mother is German, and I lived in Lebanon during the war. So I struggled with language, and I ended up drawing, thinking that I will never have to speak or use words again. And like today, I'm always a little bit surprised why people want me to speak when I draw. Drawing was always a place where I felt comfortable. I didn't have to explain things. Things were just there. And so I started my career with doing children's books. Because I was in a French school, also having lived my childhood during the war, there was not a lot of Arabic books for children. So my first quest was to fill this gap, to share what I've read in the French books, the nice, colorful, bright books that I've read into the photocopied, very badly drawn, printed books that I've studied in the Arabic. So I started with this. Actually, this slide shows, the comics that I wanted to share with the children. After working with children's books for 15 years, finally I could be an author, write, and share comics and my love for comics with children. So let's see if this goes back. So I mean, this is a book that I've wrote more recently, and it's about perspective, teaching children, to appreciate what they have when I show them the different perspectives around what they have and how to value that. well, my aim was really for them to appreciate their language, appreciate Arabic and how it's shaped, how it's told, and how it can be also told. So I've worked with a newspaper and I did some editorial work, and there I really realized how images can become public and speak to a large audience and the responsibility behind this. I worked with different authors from the Arab countries. I never wrote then, I just illustrated their articles, and that was a very touching article that I've read about this woman who had to travel every day to Bir Nabala in Palestine and cross the wall all throughout her journey without having a tiny view to the sea. And the article and the drawing that I drew, I called it Dream of a Horizon. So then I've started to understand how images can be funny by subverting certain things. And here, playing with the verticality and the horizontality of the wall, it made me realize what I could unfold. So then I started to really put in practice this, particularly in the work I shared on larger stories, where here children can walk on walls when there are barriers. And following on this idea, I started to also create narratives that are influenced from my daily life, where here, this was a time when Godzilla went out, and it's this panel where this girl from Nazareth, was sharing how she was living to a young man in Beirut, in the camps, about her reality and how his village was taken. So I put Godzilla here as, the monster that was in this action. So I had the opportunity to work with other artists and to create a collective so that we can do what we wanted. We wanted to make comics, we wanted to publish stories that are drawn. So we created a place, a magazine, and a collective of people where we also met to create together and to do workshops and different things. So these are some of the publications. This publication is written in 3 languages because in Lebanon we have the Arabic, of course, but some of them are very weak with it, so prefer using French or English. So we created a space where you could read Arabic from left to right, from right to left, and then the Latin from left to right in the same publication without interfering with the reading order. So we kind of flipped the magazine. So every time we read the book in the right position, it was in Arabic, and every time it was flipped, it was in Latin. So then if I would look at Ben and reading the magazine, if it were upside down, he would be reading in Latin. Okay, so with that, we created games where we would meet so that we can create together comics, which we understood in the larger sense as the combination between image and text to create a story. So these are some of the images. And I mean, for me, it was really amazing to have the space where I could publish anything I want and to create things that are not existing and that could also subvert. So here, having this, the silly mask of the superhero on this amazing woman whom I thought were, resisting and doing some kind of a revolution on the book, I could publish this. But also publish this absurdity of, standing still with nothing much to say in front of a soldier, fully equipped, ready to fire. But this was also a reflection on the relation between women generation of women, how women resist also aggression and violence, how I also relate to my mother, my sister, my friends. So the collective also allowed me to have a space to discuss different things, and this was discussing the violence that comes from certain words that we use to not to speak about religion, but to use religion so that we can become violent. And so here I mix Muslim and Christian iconology, if you want, in one piece where I am the protagonist, which is a lot of fun for me, being the hero of St. George, you know, fighting violence in our language. But humor, so we are talking about laughter here, and when I think I was confused since very young with language and different concepts, when to laugh, when to use this word. So, I mean, it was always kind of a confusion, a general confusion. And I think it's portrayed here very strongly in this panel that I made in 2006. Suddenly, well, the war I lived as a child ended when I was 13. And then when I was around maybe 35, there was another war. And the Israelis attacked really brutally. So the reaction here is, I called my mom. Did you hear what happened? The second panel. What happened? What happened? What happened? And I mean, here I discovered repetition could be funny. Repetition of also the shock could be also funny, especially that in this situation, you know, what can we do? There's nothing to do. I can call my mom and tell her, did you see what happened? But then it happened and it's happening, so. This is another book, and it's an introduction to why I wrote it. And it's in relation to thinking about my mother, my relation with her. So who is my mother? I'm living in Lebanon. My father is an Arabist. I'm encouraged always to read in Arabic when I'm really poor at reading in Arabic. My mom is German. She cannot understand my Arabic. So after a long period of difficulties, I felt that I needed to put it out, and I was doing a kind of a therapy. Also, this is something that, you know, thankfully we have in this century, therapy. It helps us to understand what's going on. I mean, I wrote a whole book about my mother and how she became Lebanese. It was just so important for me to understand, you know, how a daughter relates to her mother. Second, how our languages were difficult to be between us, but also it's the only thing that is between us. How to understand this angry woman, angry because, you know, she has 5 kids during the war, she has a lot of work, there's anger, how can we understand it? So it was all these questions that shaped this book, to understand also how we can live in another culture, adopt it, and still live, you know, in between, you know, being the foreigner or being, you know, the one who adopted this new reality. So I like to play with this as well, because I don't look very Arab. As you can see, I look very German. But if I speak German, it will not look like I'm German at all. So I mean, here this is during the revolution in Lebanon, recently in 2019. And I was writing every day online on social media. But this is a special one that says, a small break, and then I'm going back to the revolution. Then later I wanted to experiment a little bit more, and I created this character who is queer. Her name is Maya. And she's right after the 2019 crisis. In 2019, we had a big crisis. Everybody lost all their money. Very absurd situation. Our revolution failed as well. The people who were corrupt, who stole us, they were still in the government. Nothing much changed. But I learned yoga, and if you know the Lebanese flag, it's my shorts, and the cedar is my crutch. So I mean, here I really wanted to play with this idea, my country, this therapy, this yoga engagement, and how we can, survive this difficult period. I also drew this piece that I really love. It says, the girl is spraying on the wall dikes against the occupation. And here I use a very pejorative word for dikes, suhakiyat. It's a very big insult for lesbian in Lebanon or in the Arab countries anyway. But I use it as she appropriates the word. It's her word. She wrote it and she can write it on the wall. And against the occupation, of course, this is also our territory. And this is a time when Lebanese went to the border to support the Palestinians and what was going on there. I mean, also, I try to use different languages to portray the importance of queerness and what it means to occupy a territory in the Arab countries. This is when Sarah Higazi, Egyptian queer artist, committed suicide because of the terrible situation she had to live with the social norms she was facing, difficult social norms. So, I mean, as an artist here, it's not limited to Lebanon, really, because I had the opportunity from Samandal and the Comics Initiative to go around and meet a lot of different artists from the Arab countries and also get engaged with their causes. So here, I mean, I'm sure you know what this image is. It's a soldier who is assaulting a child. And this only happens in Palestine. So this is a book I wrote after a very strange period when I lived in France and I lost my language. Surely French was almost the first language I speak, but when I found myself in France, I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't use words. And I had to write a book about the Arabs in Marseille before I realized the situation of the Arabs in France, the difficult situation of the Arabs in France, the difficulty to go around in the street and ask, how do you feel about your Arabity? When I was, raised as a proud Arab. So it was kind of a very difficult and shattering, if you want. So I just shut up and I did a visual book. And this is part of the book. It's also discovering all this refugee crisis that we experience it in Lebanon, but not at this scale. Not at the scale of having people stop wanting to go to the beach so that they don't see corpses anymore in the sea. It was really shocking to realize, but also to see the image on the top, the refugee spaces, the spaces where they put people in so they can see what they can do later, but then they stay 20 years and 30 years. But the cover, I tried to float. I tried to change the heavy weight that I took and try to float and to think about the sea, to think about the Mediterranean, our relation to it, and where it can take us. So with this, I end my talk. I was hoping to make you laugh. I was thinking that one day I went to a Palestinian camp in Lebanon to show them my work and the work that I did for kids. And I realized there that all my work was very political. It was about war, it was about migration, difficult subjects, like I really showed. And they didn't laugh. They said, oh, very politely. And I don't know. Sometimes people think, I'm a comic artist. Comic, not comic. I make images. I make images and struggle with language. So after this book, I'm writing a book, a new book, about all the people who are helping the refugees in Europe, on the gates, on the borders, what they are doing. It's not a funny book either, but I'm trying to give it as much feelings, tactile memories, things that people can not embody, but materialize. Someone was talking today about this materialization, and I really thought about this. I thought, the news that passes us and the ones that we finally understand, it gets to us. It gets to us that there is a genocide in Palestine. It gets to us. Now, what can we do? So, yes, I will end this here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Lena, very much for that. That was very moving. You almost brought me to tears. You work with images and struggle with language. I work with language and struggle with images. So we're very well paired. I want to just first of all say how grateful I am to be here and what an honor it is. And I want to thank Sandra and your extraordinary team for getting not just me, but me and my family here. When I got a message that there was an Albert Camus festival in Minorca, and would I want to come to it? My first reaction is, hell yes. I love Camus. He was one of the first writers I read when I came to England the second time. He was one of the writers who made me feel strangely comfortable with being there. I was 19, and he was writing about his childhood in Algeria, his difficult childhood, and I kind of felt he was a fellow spirit. My essay is called Camus and Play. Anton, the gentleman I met and got on with very well, asked me at lunch whether I was going to share my wisdom with you. And I said very quickly, no, I'm going to be sharing my folly and my foolishness. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll begin first of all by telling you my earliest relationship with the trickiness of play. I was a kid, about 7 years old, I didn't know there was a civil war on. Nobody, it's hard to explain to a 7-year-old what a civil war is. And it was late, and I'd been kept indoors for a long time, and I just thought it's about time I went out and played. And it was nighttime, and I went out. I just snuck out of the house and wandered down the street and came to a stream that was at near the back of our house, and I saw this, what I thought were crocodiles and stuff on the river. And someone slapped me on the back of my head and said, what are you doing staring at those dead bodies? Then I realized for the first time that there were young men who'd been shot and thrown into the river. I fell into a kind of hallucination, was unwell, got taken to the village to be treated in an old African way. And that's my first relationship with play and history. But that's not what my essay is about. My essay is in 2 parts. The first part is Camus and play. The second part was inspired by my daughter yesterday. While we were listening to Leila's excellent opening speech, looking at the sea, my daughter spent her time with a long spoon fishing out bits of orange juice from the mug with a spoon and bringing it over to her glass, pouring it in, going back again, trying to spoon out a very small quantity of orange juice into her glass, poured it down again, and she just went on doing this endlessly. And I looked at her and I thought to myself, well, there isn't anything you can say. That's the spirit of play. So the second part is my daughter's inspiration, in a way. Camus and play part 1. One would never normally associate the solemn and illustrious figure of Camus with the spirit of play. It seems an absurdity to link the master of the absurd with the spirit of play. His early essays were steeped in an atmosphere of poverty that excluded lightness of spirit. One almost never associates Camus with fantasy, with spontaneity, with the spirit of caprice and the gods of transformation. And yet, precisely there where it seems these qualities are absent, one must investigate deeper, for the spirit of creation is impossible without the spirit of play. Camus may have hinted in his essay on the absurd that to create is already a primary response to the fundamental absurdity of existence. It may even be in itself an act of absurdity responding to a sense of absurdity. That one can make anything in a world that is beyond one's fundamental comprehension is already an act of humor, of disjunction, a tilt within a tilt, as it were. The world does not make sense, and yet one tries to make something that in itself and in relation to the world would make sense, would cohere. It is as if one were saying that the world does not make sense, but within that senselessness, one will make something that will make sense. This is either a presumption or it is the only way to respond to the meaningless. But the fact that one can attempt to create something that will make sense is to assume that sense can be made of anything. If the universe is meaningless, then how can one make anything that has meaning within it? For whatever one makes will be made from the elements of that which is meaningless. Reasoning logically, that which is meaningless on a vast level will also be meaningless at a quantum level. So either the universe is meaningless, and so therefore nothing that one does can have meaning within it, or we humans are meaning-generating beings and have within us a faculty for making meaning out of that which we do not wholly understand. Either way, the act of creation is the beginning of a transformation that one understands or not. To create is to make a universe within a universe, to create coherence, to work with the elements of chance and order, and to order them, to transfigure the spontaneous. Whether one creates deliberately or spontaneously, whether one creates through rigorous acts of reason or through elements of chance, it is always towards making something that was not there before. It is to impose a new form on the universe, give it a new meaning, a new inflection. It is to assert the malleability of the primary forms of thought and the things responsive to thought in the universe. It is to enter into partnership, into conversation with the universe, with the small and the great, with language, and with the imaginative faculties of other people's minds, which are a mystery to us. It is, in fact, to engage with the universe and others in a way that transcends work or the rigors of reason. It is to engage with the universe and with others in ways that cannot be proven in any scientific way. How can one know that a sentence one writes or a line that one draws is received or perceived in anything resembling the spirit in which they were created? The level of trust required in an act of creation goes beyond reason. It enters the realm of faith. It slips into the world of fantasy. For to create is to extend the world in directions that did not exist in the world itself. It is to supplant one system of reading the world with another one while referring to the primary universe in a parallel way. That is the essential spirit of play. Children engage with the world in a parallel way. For them, it seems to me, mostly there are two universes. And the primary universe can only be indirectly referred to and manipulated by the secondary universe. It is as though children lived in a world of metaphors, as though the world we adults take to be the real world is not the real world at all. Like Gnostic demiurges who speculated that the world we know it to be is the creation of a demon and therefore to be treated with skepticism, children treat the world as though it were a secondary reality. I think this is the secret of their inestimable innocence. Anyone who has watched very young children long enough will glimpse the same suspicion that they have about reality. It is not the world that engages children, but the many visible and invisible fulcra through which the world can be manipulated. It is always a magical operation, and at the same time, an immensely logical one. Children could be called active philosophers of the indirect engagement with reality. Philosophers use words, which is perhaps one of the most abstract and indirect ways of encountering reality. It is also the most treacherous. This is perhaps why the language of philosophy is rarely direct and clear, but often full of qualifications and hard to understand, and often as impenetrable as the most difficult poems, but without the soaring quality of poetry. Language is also treacherous, and we have sometimes ascribed to philosophers the opposite of what they're saying. With children, it's the very plasticity of the world, which is the organ used to encounter and transform it. The items of the world are used to build another world. Language plays a role in this, but only when we adults ask them questions. But play has to be taken seriously if it is to fulfill its highest condition as play. Taking play seriously is not the same as treating play with solemnity. For solemnity brings something of the classroom, something of the gloomy atmosphere with which we adults surround activities that give us no pleasure. But the seriousness of play is its absorption, its immersive qualities. A child building a sandcastle is more concentrated than a mathematician attempting to solve Fermat's theory, or an architect at their drawing board. I think we have much to learn from the profound depth of a child at play. And that is because to play is to enter another world, a world that one is creating and sustaining by the act of one's lightest but most powerful will. It is not the same will as adult concentration, which is all muscle and heat. The will of a child at play is as gentle as an angel's breath and as vast as the mind of God. For a child at play is perhaps the only genuine co-creator in our patch of the universe. Play is at the heart of creativity, and the creativity without play quickly turns to stone in the hearts of men and women. I think we have massively underestimated the central value of play to human survival, and we have tragically sidelined play from the main business of our deeds, our policies, and our highest dreams. We have made play a thing only for children and perceive of it only as something that children and people at leisure do. What we call play, our leisure activities, our card games, our amateur tennis, our charades, are often really only playing at play. So structured are they, so slotted in to the portions of our life that we have called holidays. For most people, play is that which alleviates boredom, but boredom and play belong to two very vastly different spheres. They have one or two points of intersection, but they're best thought of each in their own domain. It is with boredom that we first find Camus' presence, for boredom, contrary to the general thought, is an important subject. Boredom has its place in the philosophy of the absurd. It is a condition in which meaning seems to be drained from the world. Ennui is absurd adjacent, to use an English phrase. Ennui is a word that crops up in existentialist and absurdist texts. It is the everyday existential. It is the very opposite of the spirit of play. For play does not banish boredom, nor does it transfigure ennui. Play does not come from boredom, for that would be the assertion of a negative condition for the spirit of play. Rather, play is its own declaration of presence in a universe poised with possibilities. To play is to return to the primal power of being. It is to return to the original creative impetus. It is the sovereign freedom of mind and a reassertion of the elasticity of what seems like the fixity of the world. Sartre in La Nausée hints that jazz is the only antidote to the nausea of life. And jazz is nothing if not play. It is not just playing, it is play, improvisation as play. To the same degree, to write is to play. It is to move abstract notions that parallel real things. But to write fiction, to work with a novel, is a very particular kind of play. It is a play of mind and fantasy, of imagination and reality, of emotion and thought, the supreme play of the intelligence. Among the many things that children engage in when they build worlds with their toys, their Lego, their bricks, their toy houses, is that they're making alternative worlds. Childhood is the first dreaming ground of the novel, a form that spent over 3,000 years finding out what it is. And with every new novel, every new book, still tries to discover it, because the novel was never meant to become a fixed form, but always an improvisation, a discovery, a new way of responding to the complex mass of experience, a new way of projecting a complex mass of possibilities. The theater play is, for all the serious things it does, still always play, and essentially not much different from children playing at nurses and doctors, or at racing car drivers, or matadors. Play may be the universal antidote to the absurd. When the universe seems drained of meaning, play restores to it a freshness and a perspective that radically alters that consciousness. Camus had a Mediterranean sense of play, and in his essays and travel writings, he often shows us figures who love the sun, who luxuriate in the sea, and who like to pass time in cafes, or who sit and stare at the world, worshipping the beauty of their youthful bodies. Camus' sense of play expressed itself in wit, in banter, in dialogue. He was a goalkeeper when he was at school, and he had some of the goalkeeper's solemnity, as well as some of the goalkeeper's insouciance. As one stricken with tuberculosis, he had a sense of mortality early, which contributed to his conception of the absurd. But it is a sense of the absurd saved from the tragic by the sense of rebellion, the sense of play. For play is one of the few things that seems capable of generating its own meaning, its own raison d'être. And that is because it is its own universe. And a universe one dreams up is easier to live in than the universe in which we find ourselves. In the universe we dream up, we make up its own laws. We invest it with its own reality. In that universe, we are emperors of the spirit. Perhaps in that sense, perhaps it is that sense that gives childhood at play its royal serenity. Everywhere in the world, children in solitary play are like kings and queens of their realm. There's a painting by Chardin called The Card Player at the National Gallery. It's about a boy in a beige jacket and a tricorn hat. He's playing a card game by himself. The expression on his face is one of complete self-absorption, of reverie. I have seen that look on the faces of children building sandcastles on the beach. I have seen it on the faces of children building hotels with their Lego or working with their Sylvanian families. I have seen it more on the faces of children making walls with stone and bricks, with bits of straw or discarded objects. Childhood is a natural artistic condition. Play and creativity have slightly different origins in us, but quickly feed into the same river. The origin of play is different from the origin of creativity, for play is its own world. It has no other purpose but itself. Whatever it achieves from the expression of its condition belongs to itself alone. Play has no purpose and strives after no meaning. It somehow transcends meaning. It is its own meaning. It strives after nothing. It comes from no lack, no neurosis. It is not triggered by anything. It is wholly voluntary, and its responsibility is only to itself, to maintaining the asymmetry and the harmony of its condition. There is no guilt in play. A child may spend most of an afternoon building imaginary space rockets in a shed, and if it comes to nothing, the child has had a grand time of it. But whatever it has built, in any case, is successful in his mind, in the child's mind. There are no end games in play, for it is its own end game. Play needs no strategy, only those unspokenly required for carrying out the fantasy of its task. Often it is a self-appointed task that comes from the integrity of the playing mind. There is therefore structured play and authentic play. Structured play is when tasks are designed for children to occupy them so adults can carry on with their own business. This is play that treats children as a hindrance to our own lives. This is not really play. Many things fall into this deadly category that slowly turns our children into robots, into slaves of images and manufactured narratives. Expensive gadgets, complicated toys, high-tech distractions all fall into this category. They are not really play, but new addictions that we foist on our children so that we can answer our emails or meet our deadlines. Authentic play is the play that children devise for themselves. Such play is often transgressive, for it seems that children find more pleasure in play that goes against. Left to themselves, the child would trash a room. Left to themselves, they would create the most improbable combinations from stuff left lying around the house. We come back and find the disorder they have made. But if we could be a fly on the wall and watch them through the process, we would find them profoundly engaged in the creative act beyond our comprehension. True play has in it something essentially transgressive. When play spills the boundaries of the play is when play activates its deepest needs. One could almost say that play, am I going too fast? One could almost say that play is the profound need to disobey. It is how the self knows itself by obeying its own impulses and rebelling against the boundaries set by others. I should say quickly that while my daughter was moving bits of orange juice from the mug with a long spoon into her cup, she would often look at me to see what my response was. The more angry I looked, the more she enjoyed doing it and taking a really long time to do it. I'm just saying. Play is the arena in which the self rebels against the forms of society. Play is the assertion of a subconscious need for eternal freedom. Loss of play is a loss of selfhood. When societies want to complete its inductions of its citizens into the ranks of responsible adults, it first neutralizes the part of us that plays. That is why playful people are often looked upon as irresponsible. Seriousness is the first sign that you can be treated as a trustworthy member of society. In these times when the killing machine has entered the reality of most nations, when war and pandemics dominate our headlines, when it has become increasingly suspicious to speak up for our own rights, the spirit of play is indirectly demonized under the cloak of many kinds of political names. The spirit of deadliness, of chainsaws taken to public finances, the spirit of fear has taken over the domain of our public lives. In politics, nations are turning against immigrants, refugees. The conscience of a people are daily hardened, and a new brutality of soul defines the victorious elections across the lands. The spirit of play is dying in our times. Activism has become deadly serious. Humorists are slowly losing the will to satirize the powerful, the tech billionaires that now dominate politics, apart from our good friends that we saw earlier today. It is a measure of how serious things have got that there is less laughter in our world. There is less to laugh about. When there is laughter, it increasingly seems like the desperate laughter of those slowly edging beyond tears. How can one laugh when Gaza is being pulverized every day and no one seems to be able to do anything about it? How can one laugh when 1 billion tons of ice melts into the sea every hour in Greenland, or when thousands of acres of permafrost yields untold quantities of methane into the sky to blight our world? How can one laugh when Ukraine burns, when ghastly wars rage in South Sudan, when migrants perish in quest of better lives? Laughter seems inappropriate, even cruel, in the face of the things hanging over the human race. But the spirit of play is more central than laughter. Baudelaire drew our attention to the demonic dimensions of laughter. The spirit of play however, is an intrinsic part of the instinct of survival. It is more fundamental than the need for beauty. For our impulse to make, to create, whose complex tessellations became the deeds of civilization, has its roots in the impulse to play. Cultures that become too solemn succeed in their economic goals, but dwindle in their arts. It is no paradox that great art tends to come from times of change, times of transition. The old assertion that great art comes from times of stability is no longer tenable. Shakespeare wrote when England was in a state of war and siege. Beethoven and Jane Austen wrote under the shadow of Napoleonic wars. Tolstoy and Dostoevsky wrote when the soul of Russia was undergoing a profound shift from a feudal world to one that would feed into the revolutionary tremors. At the heart of play is the urge to question, the necessity to redream, to follow the aesthetics of wonder, to dissemble, and to put back together again in a new way. The spirit of play takes us away from established structures, away from that which has been before, takes us away from cliché, from the past, from the orthodox. To play is to engage with the new. It is possible to be serious in one's play, but it is doubtful whether one can play solemnly. The spirit of solemnity turns play into something else. The spirit of play is frozen by intentionality, by deliberateness, even by what we call purpose. It sometimes happens that our works of art begins in a spirit of play, and we quickly divert its energy to any number of worthy and noble ends. Works like those carry within them the spirit of our own betrayal. Most works of art betray the timeless energy that engendered them. We don't have enough courage to let the radical spirit of play have full reign in our works. We secretly think them childish till they are applied to big issues, to big themes. We don't realize that the spirit of play, like the diorama of the unconscious, encompasses the world and transcends our themes and our issues while containing them. We don't realize that the spirit of play contains what is true, contains with its truest expressions all the things we want to say and all the things we know and suffer, contains all of them in the most essential and timeless way. In that sense, we are not yet great enough for the radical spirit of genius we contain within us, in our cultures, in our collaboration, our solitude, and our solidarities. To my mind, the spirit of play comes from the same source as the spirit of love. For that reason, they're both infinite. They might be at the very heart of that mysterious and eternal hope that we carry within us. With the spirit of play, the heart does not turn to ice when bitterness surrounds it. And because the spirit of play does not regard the world as final, does not see the world as limited, it might be the secret power with which we outlast tyranny and oppression. If the world comes to an end and a few people remain, it might be the enchanted power of play that helps us rebuild again something better than has been destroyed. Play is intelligence multiplied by enchantment, but hidden in the most unassuming of places. It is an eternal paradox. Coming to the end. In the prologue to an early work called Tales for Some Two Sad Children, Camus writes, "It is time to speak of fairies. In order to escape from the intrepid melancholy of expectation, it is time to create new worlds. Do not believe, though, that fairy tales lie. He who tells them lies. But as soon as it is told, the fairy miracle slowly floats up into the air and goes off to live its life, real, truer than the insolence of the everyday." That last phrase, the insolence of the everyday, pure Camus. Not long ago, I wrote an essay called Existential Creativity, which was a meditation on how we create in the last days of humanity. If we knew that the world was about to end, how would we create? How would we write? This thought came to me in the very inescapable teeth of the climate crisis that surrounds us unseen. Perhaps I can answer now the question I could not entirely answer at the time. I would create at the very end of time. I would create in the radical spirit of play. And I would play without limits. I would create with the total integrity of the spirit of play. I would do what I have always wanted to do my whole life. Do that which I have only allowed myself to do maybe once or twice before in my writing, but never fully, never completely, because I always came back to the earth and to the need of my fellow human beings for aesthetic purpose. I would like to set sail on the greatest journey of all, and if the world comes to an end while I'm doing so, it will find me at peace with the spirit of all human beings and all nature in the land of freedom. For the spirit of play is never about ego or about the individual. It is one of the few times when we join the spirit of humanity in its purest state, dream its dreams, live its realities. When we look at children playing, we think we see the individual child at play, but we have no idea where their spirits have gone, into what vast mind they have entered. Play is intelligence multiplied by enchantment, touched by the infinite. Can you think of a simpler definition of genius? Thank you very much. Thank you.
first of all, I wanted to thank both of you, but and Ben, it's so touching what you said, and I wanted just to ask about your opinion that we as a human create the alphabet, the language, and we develop this language to make it very great and very deep and a lot of meanings. After that, I feel the language redesign us the same of everything that we create. Like we create the game to play, but after that, the game control or have a rule that how we design ourselves to play this game. I just wanted your opinion about how do you see the languages in general became very, very, very deep and very developed, and after that, from my opinion, we make it more abstract and simple, that we can observe now most of the people, different language, they used just 30–40% from the words or the language. I just wanted to your opinion about that. Like, do we need to get back to improve our languages, to give it more meanings and more words, to clarify the things, or to have more words to express about ourselves, or we go with this abstract and simple words that it looks like the same now?
Lena.
I'm sorry.
No?
Well, I mean, I thought about this language that you were creating, that you were thinking about. And I remember as a child telling us about Esperanza. It's like based on English, though, based on English. But today, exactly what you're saying. I'm sorry?
It's based on all the many languages.
But it looks a lot like English, or? It's Latin.
Yeah, it's got many bits of French, bits of German, bits of... But carry on.
I'm just brainstorming, and
yes,
I'm thinking maybe, I mean, today what we're using are, you know, the interface of our phone. These are the letters that we are using, right? So, I mean, going back, if you want to, also a pictorial alphabet, like the Japanese. But if this is something that will replace our language, I don't know. I mean, I speak a language that was rigid, became rigid. Nobody wants to reform it. The Arabic. The reforms are very little. The Arabic that I speak is, you know, it was reformed in a bad way, but kept like this for 200 years now. For the last 30 years, it was not changing. When everything changed around us. So, I mean, I would put the effort there. We have the alphabet. How can we change the rules around it, the grammar around it? How can we open it so that it can, you know, contain all the meanings that the new meanings that we have today? Also, I'm sure that this language from before, it was quite flexible, so that it can, you know, absorb all these new meanings during all these times. We are 2000 AD today, you know, it's a long time that passed. So definitely there's an experience there that we can learn from. So in a way, my approach is how can we fix this wrongness to my language and history.
I think language reflects us, finally. Whatever we do, even when we start a new language, and the languages that have been begun in the last 15, 20 years, power gets hold of it sooner or later, and the languages take the same destiny as all the other languages. Language and power, language and politics, language and history go together. The creation of a new language is not going to solve the problem of language, because we'll do to this new language the same thing we've done to the other languages, because we're the same people. You know, we get engaged with power, we get engaged in ego, we get engaged in issues of ownership. You know, the language is going to reflect us. So it's not a case of creating a new language when we have not created ourselves new. It's not even a case of trying to reform the language if we have not reformed ourselves. You know, it's not the language that's the problem, finally, it's us. I think it's us, it comes from us. You know? We're the first and the last problem, always. We're the first evil and the last evil. We're the first redemption and the last redemption. It's us. You know, and what you say about languages are constantly changing all the time. It's just there's the official language that often the official masters of a language that, like you say, don't want it to change. But on the ground, underneath, amongst people, it's changing. People are always borrowing words here, making up new words. They're constantly always doing that, because that's what we are. We have to find new ways to express new things. You know, the word computer entered my father's language. We had to twist the word computer, knock it around a little bit, in order for it to become a thing in that language. But I'm fascinated by the spirit that creates language in the first place. I think language is one of the most extraordinary creations, if you think about it. That at some point in the very distant past, we went, and we kind of understood one another, I think. And at some point, it became necessary to say, me, you, and then to say tree, dog, rat, frog. I mean, where did that come from? It's extraordinary. We kind of multiply the world with the confusion of designations. Kind of the imagination that created language, not just one language, but so many languages. I find that genuinely astonishing. And the kind of, for me, it's a celebration of the creativity of the human spirit, that we find that it's not enough to have a tree there, we have to give it 25 different names. Or like the Scandinavians, they say they've got, more than 200 words for snow. You know, when I hear that, I think, wow, is that creativity or is that hallucination? You know? But it's a really great question. What you're engaged in is really amazing. The attempt to create a new language. It's just, you also then have to put into that somehow a spirit of genuine humanity that should go with the development of that language, so it does not become a language of power itself. You know? You give human beings a tool, the most beautiful tool in the world, and before you know it, they'll turn it into a weapon. We will turn it into a weapon. Why am I separating myself?
Hola, buenas tardes. Me ha hecho como...
Good afternoon.
Quiero compartir una reflexión sobre el tema del espíritu de la infancia y también...
Good afternoon. I'd like to share a reflection on the spirit of children. Can you hear me?
Can you say it again, please?
No, que cuando os he escuchado y sobre todo cuando escuchaba...
When I was listening to you and you were talking about the spirit of children and how we become older and we stop playing, I was thinking that we don't stop playing, but maybe we play wrongly as adults. We adopt the role, a profession, and the playfulness that we used to have as children, we just keep changing different roles. Sometimes we're the baddie, the goodie, we invade or not. Suddenly, when we become adults, we become very serious. We play the role of I am a businessman, or I am the baddie, or I am the oppressed. And never again we change hats. So if we were to change these roles, we would still dancing, singing, painting, because people stop drawing, stop dancing and singing. And what we're now talking about empathy, we would wear the hat of the other one, and we would really understand what the issue is that others suffer. I believe yesterday we were talking about wars, oppression. I believe that the most serious issue is that they have empowered in this world directed by men where they don't enjoy themselves. They don't know how to have fun. They stop playing. Power makes them more serious and rigid. You know, I believe that plenty of women, I remember an workshop, a very important meeting, and when we left that meeting, said, hey, we had fun, but now we become being mothers, or we will play again, we will dance again, and we take it less seriously. Don't you believe that if we took ourselves less seriously as being adults, intelligent, and such important people, the world would change?
I don't know. I partly blame, I'm not going to blame the great evangelist. But, you know, there's that passage in the Bible. When I was a child, I behaved like a child. When I became an adult, I put away childish things. That's seeded into us. You put away childish things. Voila. Right there in the center of our religion. You know, it's enshrined right there. Point comes when you put away childish things. So I don't know if I love the idea that women get together and have a lot of fun. Can you infect the rest of us with it, please? As for taking ourselves less seriously, I don't think it's a case of taking ourselves less seriously. I don't think you can scale down the seriousness. I think we just need a completely different spirit, or a completely different orientation. I think we should dance more. I love the fact when Yinka asked us all to stand up, everybody stood up. You know, it's not because of the beautiful authority of her dancing spirit, of her flamenco body. I think it's because we wanted to engage in a spirit of play. I think inside everybody, inside even really serious people, inside mobsters and gangsters, even dictators, inside all kinds of very tucked away inside there still is an urge to go back, to go forward, to that. But you know, we think society will frown on us. We might lose our jobs. People might think, oh dear, he's lost it. You know? We're scared of what people might say. We're scared of being ridiculous. You know? But I think we should embrace being ridiculous, no? No? I mean, after all, this is the land of Don Quixote. my hero.
Thank you. Really, thank you so much for engaging us, in this spirit of play, of understanding play as a place of rebellion with your pictures, rebellion with your words, engaging with this both intelligence in a different way. Thank you so much. And I think that now, after these words, we're gonna also feel the music that is coming, like to feel also this sensitivity that we talk about through your words. So thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.